In Monster Hunter World, you don't have to take the hunts on solo. You can take them on with other hunters. Up to 4 of you can take on the various challenges the game presents you. But when playing online, there are certain unwritten rules or etiquettes to follow which will result in everyone having a more enjoyable time. I'm Darcblade and this is the 12 etiquettes of Monster Hunter World. Now this list is in no particular order, it's just 12 tips to help you with your online experiences. First is to prepare for the hunt ahead. Now what I mean by this is when you're going for a hunt, make sure that you have your item pouch stocked up with all the items you need, so health potions, traps, buffs, etc. You should also make sure that your gear is decent enough for the fight ahead, whether this means putting on certain resistances, certain mantles, or even using different jewels in your sockets. All of this can help in the fight ahead. Also on top of that, make sure you eat at the canteen or at camp before you actually leave for the fight, so you get those extra buffs as well as the possible health increase and stamina increase. If you don't get the health increase from your canteen meal, then you can either take nutrients or a max potion. Being ready for when the fighting starts definitely pays off in the long run. Next is to utilize the supply box, otherwise known as the blue box. This is found at camp and in it will contain some extra items. Whilst these may not be the most helpful items when it comes to late game, they nonetheless can be useful. But you notice when you open the box that there are multiple stacks. Now these are supposed to be one for each player of the hunt, so be considerate of your fellow hunters and don't take all the items for yourself. Next is to know your weapon. Now depending on the difficulty of the hunt, you may want to consider what weapon you are using. For example, if you're learning a weapon or trying it out for the first time, it's not the greatest of ideas to take it into a tempered Nergigante fight. With that in mind, when you are getting used to weapons, maybe take on the lower rank quests, or the ones that don't have high stakes. Also when it comes to your weapon, remember what your weapon can do to your allies as well. For example, try not to send your allies flying with a hammer, or constantly trip them with a longsword. Each weapon can affect your allies differently, so be wary of this. Which brings us on to our next etiquette tip, which is positioning. When fighting a monster, whether it be standing, or in particular when it's knocked over or in a trap, you need to be wary of where you are positioned as well as where your allies are positioned. You also have to be considerate of what type of damage your weapon deals. So for example, should you be using a severing weapon like a longsword or something, try to go for the monster parts that can be cut off like the tail. And on the flip side, should you be using a blunt weapon, position yourself at the head to get that KO build up as well as the potential to break the monster's horns. Also, try to space out a bit. Because players can constantly hit and interrupt one another, you want to avoid stun locking your allies as it will drop the group's overall DPS and result in a very annoyed hunter. Next is life powder. When going into a hunt with others, always consider bringing life powder with you. This is a small heal that heals everyone within range. While the heal is not massive, it can still be useful if an ally is in trouble. For example, if your friend is on fire or stunned, then using life powder can keep their health high enough for them to get out of the stunned effect, put out the fire, and in general keep themselves alive. It can also come in handy if an ally has Moxie and their health falls under the Moxie limit. A life powder can easily bring them back over that limit, so if they do take another fatal hit, the Moxie buff will save them. So there are lots of situations this can be useful in. Of course there are other types of powders that can all help in a fight, but life powder can save lives. Next is stunned allies. When an ally is stunned, as in they have stars above their health bar, they can't move, they look dizzy, another player can actually knock that stunned player out of the stunned state. All they have to do is walk up to that player and hit them with their weapon. This also applies for if your allies are paralysed or they've fallen to sleep. Bopping your friends on the head can again save their lives, especially if a monster has them in their sight and they're stunned. The next etiquette is when it comes to sleeping monsters. When a monster is about to fall asleep, there is a clear indication. The monster will look drowsy, it will start getting sluggish and slowly fall to the ground asleep. After which, bubbles will start to appear from its mouth and nose. Now whilst you can still continue to hit the monster while it's falling, as soon as the bubbles appear, if you should hit it again, it will wake it up. Now when it comes to waking up the monster, the first hit on a sleeping monster will have its damage increased. So you want to save that for a attack or move that hits incredibly hard. So you really don't want to waste this opportunity on just a little hit. The next etiquette is sleep bombing. Now when a monster is asleep, you may want to consider the sleep bombing tactic, which is basically to pile as many large barrel bombs or mega barrel bombs on top of the monster while it's snoring away, and then combine this with a hard hitting weapon like the greatsword to simultaneously hit the barrels and the monster, which can result in massive damage. It can also be a really useful way of breaking stubborn monster body parts. The next etiquette is when it comes to capture or kill. Now whilst there is no real difference in terms of what loot you get from capturing or killing a monster, there are a few things you want to consider. For example, going for the kill enables you more time to break the various monster parts to get specific monster loot, like the tail for example. whilst capturing on the other hand allows you to potentially finish the quest a lot quicker. Obviously the optimal part would be to break as many parts as possible and then go for a capture, but when hunting in the group to save any aggro, maybe it's best to communicate with one another and work out what the majority of the group want. The next etiquette tip is when it comes to mounting monsters. Now unlike other Monster Hunter games, if an ally mounts a monster, then the other hunters in the hunted party can still attack the monster to help topple it. In the past this wasn't the case, but there are still things to consider when a friend has decided to play rodeo with the scaly beast. As the monster is preoccupied, you can take this time to sharpen your weapons, heal, set up traps, craft, or even eat. So take this as a chance to prepare for when the monster comes crashing down to the ground. It is also bad form to use a flash pod to bring down a flying monster if it's been mounted. So be mindful of if this monster suddenly takes off, because it could mean that one of your allies has managed to successfully mount it. If that is the case, just wait for your ally to bring him down. The next etiquette tip is communication. Whilst it's not vital to use a mic in Monster Hunter World, you can still communicate with your allies through a basic chat system, or even through pre-made expressions, notes, stickers and gestures. So using these with your allies will alleviate a lot of the etiquette issues and make it clear what your goals are in the hunt ahead. So if you want to kill a monster, capture it, perform the sleep bomb target or cut off a certain body part, you can do this through the text system. You can also edit your pre-existing messages, shoutouts and so on. To do this you go to your options and then you go to shoutouts, and then there you can pick from pre-made ones or create your own. You can then tie these to gestures or when certain situations are met, for example when a player is stunned, when an ally has mounted a monster, and so on. You can actually create comedy gold with the customizations here. And then finally the last etiquette is to not quit. It's always good manners to keep the fight going. Just because someone faints or disconnects, it is no reason to quit and leave your allies to face the monster alone. While quitting is fine when you're playing solo, as a group you should try to finish what you start. So those are 12 etiquette tips for Monster Hunter World. Now these are unwritten rules and this is only really what I've experienced with the game. Of course it goes without saying that manners are always appreciated when it comes to playing online no matter what game it is. Please, thank you, and good work comments always go far and will lead to more pleasant hunts for everyone involved. So don't be a dick and let's make hunts fun for all. If you have any more etiquette advice or unwritten rules for Monster Hunter World, by all means leave a comment down below, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you 12 etiquettes in Monster Hunter World. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.